Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Derek and Drew and Brian. Good to have you guys today. We will be talking about the 52nd verse of the Tao Te Ching. Someone asked me the other day if they could attend the podcast, how the podcast worked. Why we only have a couple of people sometimes. And the reason being, most people are shy to talk about the Tao because they think they don't know enough to share. For me, the Tao and studying the Tao Te Ching relates to my recovery. So we just discuss how it relates for us. And it can only relate for us in the moment anyway. It's not about our mental understanding of the Tao or Chinese philosophy. I tried to read one of my sponsees. We read books. I read with each sponsee what they want. This is Craig from Scotland. He wanted to read the short history of Chinese philosophy. And the short history was 400 pages. And we got about halfway through that. And I told Craig, I said, man, I can't do any more of this. Please, let's go to something else. We're not talking about the philosophy of the Tao Te Ching or Chinese philosophy as it relates to Taoism. What we're talking about is how it really relates to us, how we resonate with that, and how it speaks to us. So everyone's welcome to come to the meeting, and you don't even have to share in the meeting. You can just listen if you'd like. You won't be called upon. You volunteer to share. So we have people who come sometimes and never share at all, which is fantastic. Whatever works for them. We record every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, and we use a private Facebook group for communication and discussion. It's under the same name as the podcast, the Tao of Our Understanding. So you can go to Facebook and search for that. If you're not in Facebook and you would like information, you can get in touch with me at info@buddyc.org. And I will get the link to you if you would like to come to our meeting. And we use this meeting to be the podcast. And if you say something in the meeting and we've had this happen, something very personal, like we do sometimes in meetings, but yet we don't want that to be shared in perpetuity, which the podcast is out there. So I'm very careful what I say and what I publish, because I don't want my great grandkids. If it's something I don't want them to hear, I try not to say it, But we can cut those things out. It's no big deal. If you say something that you're not comfortable being shared, you can get a lot of resources at buddyc.org that we have there, sobriety apps, all kinds of things that can help you if you're looking for resources for your sobriety or for your sponsees. But that's my announcements for today. That's buddyc.org. Okay, the 52nd verse of the Tao Te Ching. Let's start with the Jonathan Star. I'll read the Jonathan Star, and then I think Drew's going to read the Stephen Mitchell. And if you guys have another translation you would like to read, we can read those as well. That which creates the universe is the mother of the world. By knowing the mother, one knows her children. Such is their unity that one does not exist without the other. Fully embrace your life, and you will share in the glory of creation. The mother herself will be your guardian, and all her creation will be your guide. Stay with the mother, shut the mouth, close the gates, and you are never in trouble. Abandon the mother, open the mouth, be busy with others, and you are beyond all hope of rescue. Seeing your own smallness is called insight. Honoring your own tenderness is called strength. The sun in all its glory reveals but a passing world. Only the inner light illuminates eternity. Only that light can guide us back home. Have faith. Follow your own shining. Be aware of your own awareness. On the darkest nights, you will not stumble. On the brightest days, you will not blink. This is called the practice of eternal light. Drew, you want to read Stephen Mitchell for us?
Sure. In the beginning was the Tao. All things issue from it, all things return to it. To find the origin, trace back to the manifestations. When you recognize the children and find the mother, you will be free of sorrow. If you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. Seeing into darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. This is called practicing eternity.
Thank you, Drew. Any comments, guys? Yeah, let's use the raise hand today because I'm having to do this from a phone. So that makes it easier for me. I'll read my interpretation. You can email me at info@buddyc.org if you want a copy of the book. There's some other samples at buddyc.org. It's powerless but not helpless. I'm happy to send you a PDF of the most current copy, the most current writing. Verse 52, following the inner light. At the beginning of our quest for recovery, we begin to see what our life can be. We start experiencing freedom from fear in our everyday lives. Learning to trust this intuitive inner voice is a yielding that brings great strength. Insight is restored, and we begin to avoid misfortune. This is called returning to the nature of one's origin. Okay. Trusting the intuitive inner voice. Derek?
This one feels different than some of the other ones to me, but maybe I haven't read the Tao Te Ching enough, but it reminds me of that last paragraph specifically, but then even your whole interpretation really, it reminds me of meditation. I don't know if that, I don't know how much of the Tao Te Ching talks about meditation, but that's why I said I don't know if I've seen this in the Tao before, but it's almost like an analogy, and maybe not even an analogy, specifically talking about meditation. It seems like, inner light, and there was another part that it reminded me of, we shall intuitively know how to handle things that we, I guess, didn't used to know how to handle. I forgot what the A quote is.
The big book. Yeah,
they used to baffle. Right, exactly. Yeah, if insight is restored, and then if you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. I don't know. A lot of this just for me strikes me as like what I get from meditation, because I think I've told Buddy a lot about this. Is like I finally started meditating a couple years ago, and for the first time in my life, I could pause when agitated. And I think I'm perfect at it, but I like never even approached having a chance at it before that. It was like this weird, suddenly it was even an option for me. And that I really feel like that only occurred as a result of meditation. But I don't know, has the Tao ever talked about meditation? Does it talk about meditation?
Talks about looking within, but
yeah.
I don't think meditation per se. Derek or Drew?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If it specifically talks about meditation, I don't think so. But the phrases that spring to mind about that are things like, letting the waters calm. The analogies about there being dust in the water, and if you can let the waters calm, then the dust eventually settles, and you can see further and clearer. That's that was the first thing that sprang to mind. I think that's in here a couple of times. I don't think that analogy is just in here once. And yeah, that line, at least in the Stephen Mitchell about seeing into darkness is clarity. I hadn't thought about that in terms of meditation, but I think that line is spot on for meditation. Seeing into darkness, that's kind of what meditation is for me. Is there's nothing there. It is basically darkness, but that's when the actual clarity comes. So yeah, I hadn't thought about this in terms of meditation, but I think that's a great analogy.
I do too, Derek. I didn't see that either. Yeah, I'm glad you finally had the idea to start meditation, Derek. That's good.
Well, it had been suggested before. I will say that.
Really?
Well, no, of course you had the app. I think your app helped. It made me think, okay, I'll try this crazy stuff. I always thought it was not a real thing, to be honest. That's not to get too off the track on that topic, but I just always thought it was a bit of a mumbo jumbo thing, like where people would say they did it, I guess, and just close their eyes. And I'm like, all right, we can do that. I didn't think it was like, I got nothing out of it, frankly, until a couple years ago. And then I was like, and I noticed actually, like I said, I could actually pause occasionally when agitated. But that's, a big revelation for me. I don't know about you guys.
Brian?
Yeah, for me, the meditation piece, man, where it relates to me is it talks about, I was just kind of looking at some of Derek Lynn's commentary, and it talks about, all these effects can be traced back to causes. And if you continue tracing everything back, we arrive at the ultimate cause, the Tao. To me, when I meditate, man, it makes me realize that I'm just a drip in the ocean, and regardless of where my mood is or what I'm struggling with, I'm just along for the ride, and life is continuing on. And so, yeah, the meditation piece is good for me to be able to quiet my mind and sometimes just arrive at a solution. It's like you quiet the mind, and then all of a sudden there's the path. It's right there in front of you.
Sometimes, Brian, the solution just presents itself, right? I mean, that's really how, once I step out of the way, and stop my controlling, many times it's just sitting there waiting on me.
Yeah. A comment was made a minute ago about meditation and the hokiness of it. I just had the thing that come to my mind is there's a church I attend in Memphis for one of my meetings, and there's a really interesting guy there. I don't know what his capacity is in the church, but me and him always talk. And a couple of weeks ago, he said, "Well, I know your meeting time is going to start soon, and people start showing up." And he said, "I'm going to get out of here where y'all can do y'all's voodoo." I just started laughing. I was like, okay, appreciate it.
Man, I'm glad I have freedom from thinking I have to fix other people now.
Yeah. And I know he was joking, but it just voodoo.
But a lot of people don't joke with that. I've had a friend that was a pastor, and we were talking about recovery, and he had one path to recovery, and he wouldn't allow, we believe it wasn't, this is how it's worked, and I'm like, wow, what freedom we have now to allow recovery in our life without having to dictate exactly how it's supposed to work. And that freedom seems to work in everything else too. So that great comments. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Drew?
But yeah, just to keep talking on the subject, excuse me. What Brian mentioned about church and, so religious people kind of, turn up their noses at meditation, or maybe even worse. it just brought to mind, I went to a Catholic funeral last year. Never been to a Catholic service of any kind. And at the beginning, and it was Catholic. I mean, it was serious. And before the funeral began, all the Catholics were reciting the same thing. I mean, there were little variations, but it was just the same prayers over and over and over and over and over. And it reminded me of meditation. I felt like kind of the purpose of it was for the people saying their prayers to get their minds off of themselves, to quiet their minds, to get their minds, off of whatever troubles they had, whatever was stirring them up, whatever was keeping them from being present in the moment. And that's what these prayers were doing for them, was getting them in the moment, getting their minds clear. So to me, it was kind of a vocal meditation almost. So I feel like, the meditation we're talking about doing is really leading us to the same place that those repetitive prayers were leading the Catholics to. So I feel like they're both kind of means to the same end.
Good point,
and then,
Drew. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then, what Derek was talking about, I was kind of in the same place as him, thinking meditation was kind of a woo-woo thing until I started doing it. And then I realized what Derek mentioned was what it does for me is not, it helps me in the moment. It does get me, when I'm meditating, it does get me in a more peaceful moment. But the main benefit I get out of it is later throughout the day, I can recognize when my mind is agitated, when I'm, caught up in selfishness or resentment or fears or something like that. The more I meditate, the better I'm able to catch myself in those negative thought patterns or thought loops, and I'm better able to just say, okay, I'm having those thoughts. I can let those go. I can just return to the moment. So when I talk to people about meditation, who are skeptical about it, I tell them that's the main benefit I get. It's like, it's like exercising at the gym. It feels good when you're doing it, but kind of the purpose of it is for you to be healthier throughout the day. It helps in the moment, but it also sets you up to be in a better spot all day long as the days progress.
Thank you, Drew. That's good. And we were all raised in the South, so it happens today that we have this is what we have. That's interesting because meditation was not on my radar ever before recovery. Derek?
I was Googling Billy Graham yesterday, I'll be honest, for a different reason than anything to do with what we're talking about. Actually, I was, it turns out I'm related to him actually as a distant cousin. So I was just like doing genealogy research just for yucks. And I found this quote from him that he had an interview towards the end of his life. And he said, if he had any regrets, and he said, I'd spend more time in prayer and meditation. And that was one of the things he said that struck me. And I had to just Google it to verify, is that what he said? Because that's not what I thought. I would have thought he would have said, I'm not an expert on him. That's why I was Googling him. But I was like thinking he wouldn't have said meditation, to be honest.
Who are we talking about, Derek? I'm sorry.
We're talking about Billy Graham. I happened to see a quote from Billy Graham yesterday.
Huh.
And he said, I would have spent more time in my life in prayer and meditation. And I didn't, because to me, like, he is kind of like a quintessential, well, he's a Southern Baptist, right? He's the one of the quintessential ones, as I understand it, or one of the pioneers, I guess I would say, of it. And I just thought it was interesting that he said meditation and prayer, and we're talking about being from the South, and it's like that isn't, I wasn't raised in the church per se, but I don't remember talking about meditation growing up. I did go to church, and I think, anyways, I don't know if you guys want to talk about the other parts of the quote or the chapter too,
Sure.
but earlier,
Whatever you want to talk about, Derek's cool.
okay, yeah, earlier when it talks about the mother stuff, like when you recognize the children, you find the mother. I only have the Stephen Mitchell here, but what is that about? What do you
Let's
guys
go
get out of it?
Hey, before we go there, Derek, I do want to go to the beginning and start down. I want to talk a little more about meditation and Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
Just for a minute.
Sure.
Because I've done a little research myself. All those things like Drew, you were talking about the repetitive prayers. I believe that's a form of meditation because you're setting your mind aside, setting your thinking aside. If you're from a charismatic, fundamental Christian background and you pray in the Spirit, that's a form of meditation. Now, if I said I was going to go meditate and do like I do now, my Christian friends, y'all heard me talk about, they would think that was not appropriate. They wouldn't tell me that, but I know what I thought in the past. I would think that there was no why would you sit there and do that? That would be more of a physical exercise than something spiritual. That you're really not doing something spiritual when you're just sitting there. Now I know everything's spiritual. So it's all part of that. There, you can look at, I believe the site's still up. I can't check it right now. johnmain.org, JOHNMAI, and maybe one of you guys can check it for me. He was I think a Franciscan monk who was who practiced international law, retired in 1979-80 to be a monk, and then died in the late 80s. But he did a lot of research on the history of meditation in early Christianity. And in early Christianity, there was a meditation practice. Is that site still up? Have y'all found it?
Yeah, it's there. johnmain.org, right?
Yes. And there's pictures of him with the Dalai Lama, and he was very well respected, and I knew nothing about him until I started researching Christianity and meditation. He talks about that what did Jesus do when he went to the mountain all night? Did he sit there and continually ask God for things? I was told in recovery that prayer and meditation work together. Prayer is asking or showing thanks, and then meditation's listening. And with time, for me, that has gone. At first it was all talking, all asking, and no meditation. I tell you, when that happened, I was out for lunch with my sponsor here in Georgia, and it's not uncommon to see folks pray over their food. And we were at lunch place, and this guy was praying over his food and the table next to us. And everybody's quiet when someone does that, And I couldn't help but listen. I was like, everything he just said, he was asking for things for him. And I thought, I wonder how long this is before meditation. I wonder how long my prayers would be if I quit asking for things. So I thought I would try it. And my prayers got very, very, very short when I was not asking for things. So that put me on this path, this meditative path. And then I started looking, there's 16 years that there's no record of Jesus's life. Why in the world? What do you think Jesus did for that time? There's a lot of different ideas and thoughts on what that was. Some people say, well, he just worked in the carpenter shop with his father. Well, they were talking about him at 12. They would talk about things he did during that time too, if he was around. He just didn't shut the spigot off and didn't do anything else, for those years. And then, oh, here I am. I think he traveled because there was a major trade route through Jerusalem. Was that the Silk Road? I believe. I don't actually know the name of the route, but I believe it was. Anyway, he could have gotten to the Far East, and I believe he studied Buddhism. And there's some books that you can, if you start researching, that's out there that talk about these things. There's I think it's a town in Kashmir where they say he taught, and they have record of all of this, but people do make up things, so who knows? But it would make sense because when he started teaching at 29, he said, "A new commandment I give you." He didn't give a commandment, that was already there. This was something new to them. So it was something outside of what they had been taught in Judaism. So where did he see that? I'm thinking he studied Buddhism some. It's what I think. But who knows? It doesn't really matter. But to say that Jesus didn't meditate, I think that would be, even in the Old Testament Psalm of "Be still and know that I am God." If that's not meditation, I don't know what is. It didn't say have faith and know. It said be still and know. Like Brian, you were talking about, when I am still, I start to know things. I can see solutions that I couldn't see when I'm frantically trying to fix problems. I mean, things I'm not even thinking about that I may need an answer. Oh, that's how to do that. That happens regularly in meditation. I don't think that would happen if I didn't slow down to meditate, Brian?
I was thinking about, breaking it down where we say, be still, or then just be, just existing right where your feet are in the moment as it comes.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. Let's start at the beginning and read through. Gosh, we're eating up the time, aren't we? It's been a good meeting so far. In the beginning was the Tao. All things issued from it. All things return to it. To find the origin, trace back the manifestations. When you recognize the children and find the mother, you will be free of sorrow. The mother would be, this is what you were talking about here, right, Derek? This is what you were.
Yeah.
So
I didn't really have anything to say about it. I just thought it was interesting that it talks about that. They sounded like genealogy to me as well.
Yeah. Drew?
But yeah, for me, that part, finding the origin, tracing back the manifestations, when you recognize the children and find the mother, being free of sorrow, what that's an analogy for me of is when my mind is troubled, when I'm in selfishness, when I'm angry, when I'm irritated, when I'm resentful, when I'm in those negative thought patterns, finding the origin of those, those are the manifestations, the anger, the resentments, the fears. Being free of sorrow means I need to go back and find where those come from. Those are the children, and I need to find the mother. I need to go back to see, where are these coming from? So that's the part that's what I get from that part, is an instruction for how to eventually quiet those parts, to get rid of the selfishness, to get rid of the negative thought loops, negative thought patterns, is not just making them go away. That's helpful in the moment, but actually going back to the source. It's like having an electrical problem in the house. Fixing the light, that's good, but going back, where is this coming from, tracing it back, that's what's going to help the most. So that's what I get out of that part.
Thank you, Drew. A lot of times you can see the parent in the child, right? So when I can recognize things a little clearer, I can start recognizing where their origin is, like Drew was talking about. You could flip it the other way though, and as we awaken spiritually, which isn't that what the 12th step talks about? Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. That awakening for me could equate to the recognizing. So when I can recognize love or compassion, I can see God behind that. I can see the nature of all things. I can see the universe at work, ever how we want to describe that. Because a lot of times, you run into somebody and, oh, I'm such and such's child. Well, I can see them in you now that you mention that. You favor them. That I think that's the same kind of thing. Does that help, Derek? Between mine and Drew's comments?
Yeah. Yeah, and that does make sense. And I mean, definitely in terms of applying it to our own life, like what Drew was saying about, well, like, if we're thinking, I mean, for me, if I'm thinking I got to do this thing at work, I got to take this action. If I can look at what's behind my reason for taking that action, what is my intention? As a, is there an origin of fear or resentment behind it? That resonates with me in terms of how do I apply this in my own life, for sure. Yeah, because I didn't think they were talking about genealogy, but it just sounds like,
In a way, they are.
On the surface.
But in a way, they are, Derek, because the children,
Genealogy are, sorry.
the children are, their genetic makeup is of their parents. So in the same way, we can recognize the mother through the children. So it does have an element of that, though. And, you could look at it either way. Like Drew was talking about looking at it as fear, as the mother. And I hadn't thought about that. I thought the opposite. I thought of the mother as being the Tao. And it's interesting there, it doesn't say just the good things return, everything returns. I want to segregate between the things that I think are good and the things I think are bad. But I have found peace comes from the acceptance of the moment as it is right now. And then I can see if there's something that I can change, but I've got to accept it. The more I accept it, the more I can recognize. So another way of looking at it could be if I recognize the children through meditation and resulting in acceptance. And when I get to acceptance, I can start seeing what's behind things, and I can have peace and joy, even in a situation that is perceived bad, or that is bad in my thinking, death of a child. I mean, anything, that's not just perceived bad, that's a bad situation, But I found that if I could get to a place of acceptance, quit fighting it, be still, I can know. Yeah. I liked what I think it was Drew that said about meditation. Meditation is not an end all be all. It's not about how much time you meditate. It's about being able to take what you learn on the cushion out into those other hours of the day. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, guys. It's interesting in the next stanza. If you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled, or you'll be free, or you'll have sorrow, right? He automatically goes to judgment. I wish he didn't do that. Judgment and desires go together. I'm definitely troubled when I do that. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by your senses, your heart will find peace. So this is really showing us the results. These are how in our life, we are not recognizing the origin of things. is because if I'm judging, if I'm all about what Buddy wants, then I'm not able to recognize the children because I'm not trying to. I'm all caught up in myself, right? So when I start judging things, that's a red flag for me that I need to look. I need to take a step back and look at what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Drew?
Yeah, on this stanza, closing your mind in judgments, trafficking with desires. What that brought to my mind is, I don't watch much TV anymore that has ads. You do streaming for pretty much everything. It's usually just sports I watch where I see ads. But just thinking about how so many ads, the purpose of them is to get you to judge your life in one way or another, usually as being incomplete in some way. And then, showing you the thing that now you need to desire it to get your, to find whatever you're seeking, happiness or completeness or peace or, something like that. So that may be something I do is, next time I'm watching something that has ads, just kind of look at the ads, what is it trying to get me to judge in my life? My appearance or, how I'm perceived by others or the cleanliness of my house or the clothes that I wear, the car that I drive, the vacation that I go on, something like that. And then look at, the desire that it's trying to bring up in me. I think that this stanza kind of really goes against the buy mentality that our society unfortunately is very, very involved in. So that's just something I'm going to take from this, is just being a little more aware of, when somebody is trying to get me to judge myself or others, and what it's trying to get me to desire, get snap myself out of that loop.
Too, Drew, I like his word choice. He says traffic with desires. Not that you have desires. We all have desires. But are those desires what is running our life? Yeah, that's good. And then our last stanza, which is the opposite of what we would think. I know for me, seeing into darkness is clarity. What? I thought seeing into light would be clarity. How can I see? Wait a minute, that makes no sense. Knowing how to yield is strength. I thought you were strong when you didn't have to yield. This is the paradox of truth, right? And this next one, using your own light and return to the source of light. Not use your own light to do your own thing, but you're looking for a return to the bigger light, right? And this is called practicing eternity. Or Course in Miracles would be, we talked about this, I think last week or week before. And the way I yield in a situation doesn't mean I just roll over and take whatever comes my way. It's that within I stop fighting. I yield within. I can yield within in a situation and open myself up to solutions that I can not see otherwise. Drew?
Yeah, just real quick, you froze up for about, 15 seconds or so. So when you go back through the podcast, mark this time.
Okay, thank you. My power came back on. So.
Oh, okay. Good.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Hey, you've seen the light. Yeah.
And what I said was life changing. I don't know what and it's lost. Anything else, Drew?
The knowing how to yield is strength. I know I always feel better when I do allow others to, to cut ahead in front of me. If even if, I'm in this, I get to the line at the supermarket first, by a couple of seconds, letting somebody in ahead of me, that's fine. Or in traffic, letting somebody in ahead who's being a jerk and trying to force it. I can always be a jerk back, show them, no, this is my lane, something like that. But, if I let them ahead, I feel better. I feel stronger, going to play pickleball. If I want to play in the next group, but somebody else does too, and letting them go ahead, and I'll just wait for the next one. That I think that shows more strength than, well, I was here first. So, allowing others to do something, even though I have the right to tell them not to, I think there's more strength in that than, proving how tough you are, forcing others to submit to your will.
Yeah, I still don't do good with those things you mentioned. As far as I'm good with letting people in front of me, but when someone doesn't want to let me in, man, that still steams me most of the time. But yeah, the yielding for me is more of the inner yielding. Like I come to a situation and I'm in the middle of a business startup right now, and I have my idea of how I think it should be. And then how dare these people bring ideas that are different than mine? But I have learned, and this I do I think I do real well. I'll give myself a B plus, A minus, maybe even an A on this, of paying attention to their ideas and taking them into consideration. Not necessarily doing them, but being open-minded enough to consider them. Used to, that was not the case. I knew what was best, do it my way. If your way was better, that would be what I would be suggesting. So I've learned that yielding is an inner yielding that may not have anything to do with the circumstance itself, but how I approach the circumstance. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. Use your own light to return to the source of light. Once I had my light, I would think I'd go the other way. Why in the world do I want to return? But isn't that what we're doing with everything, though, that we learn that life is returning, that the spiritual path is the cyclical path of returning, just like the rain falls from the sky and then it evaporates again and goes the cycle around and around. Yeah, that's good. Any other comments, guys?
This is Derek. I was just going to add that some physicists theorize that most of the universe is dark matter, what we can't see, and then also the senses, not being led by our senses. My initial thought is that's all I have is my senses. I don't. What if I don't have that? Then what do I have? What I can see, smell, touch, feel. But it's not all I have. It's there's because I can see, sense, smell, touch, feel. There's an I there that gets to choose, to not be led by that. But it doesn't always feel like that. So this is good. This is good stuff here. Yeah, that's all I got.
And it seems like, Derek, that's from the third stanza. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by your senses, as if being led by your senses results in judging, maybe. So am I being led? And if I'm led by my senses, I'm usually looking out for me. So I guess the question may be, how can I let compassion lead me instead of my senses? And when I'm thinking senses, I'm thinking, I want, I want this, I want this, I want this, and moving from that to how can I help with this? How can I help with this? How that kind of thinking. Drew?
Yeah, the led by the senses. I agree. To me, that speaks more to not just following your impulses. Being more mindful of what you need rather than what you want. Kind of the seven deadly sins. That's a little bit what it reminds me of is gluttony and lust and greed and those sort of things. Not worrying about what I lack, but being grateful for what I have, taking only what I need. That's kind of what this reminds me of.
Drew, how about if it's take that a step further? What if you take it from not just what I need, moving from what I want to what I need, but moving from those two instead of what I need or I want to what someone else needs, or even to maybe what someone else wants.
Yeah, the selflessness.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that's where we find the peace, right? That's where the peace comes from. Is when I start being concerned about you. We don't think it's that way, but we find that in recovery that what helps us the most is working with another alcoholic. It's immunity against drink. So good stuff today, guys. Anything else before we close? Well, thanks for a great conversation, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.